Ash, that transmission. Mother's deciphered part of it. It doesn't look like an SOS.
What is it then?
Well, it looks like a warning. I'm gonna go out after them.
What's the point? I mean, by the time it takes to get there, they'll know if it's a warning or not, yes?
Listeners everywhere, welcome to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. And you know what? We ain't drawing no straws. We're just going to kill that thing right now. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And I'm Michael. Hi.
That's Michael. Michael Klug is back. Woo-hoo! Yay. I know. It's been a hot minute, and we're like, you know what? It's just not the same. It's just not the same without the porn stash.
We proved we can do a couple of shows without him. That's the important thing.
Well,
that's true.
We don't want him getting too high on his horse out there.
No, you're right.
I was waiting. It's been because the last time I was here, we did the V deep dive, and when the theme started, I was like,
we talked about V.
We did some time ago.
Time
ago. But I was waiting for the clunk song theme to come in.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what's missing? Oh wait, that's not part of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh no V today, but you know what? We are going to talk about Alien. You know, we're going to talk about extraterrestrials of a sort.
The xenomorphs. All
right, welcome everybody. I suppose we should just jump right into it. I mean, do we have any? You know what? I guess I should mention before we play our deep dive fanfare. You know, the responding to the request that nobody wanted. The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan is now on TikTok. So if you're not following us on Instagram and not following us on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, you can not follow us on TikTok now too. So that's exciting.
Well, I congratulate you. I'm not on TikTok, so good for you.
Look, I'm not gonna lie. That was the that might be the big takeaway from the whole pandemic for me. It's not finding a way to virtually do this podcast. It's not anything. It's that TikTok is crazy addictive and it's awesome and it's super fun to go down rabbit holes and yeah. So and thank you to Superfan Ben for already following us on TikTok. We'll make it worth your while.
First one. We would give him some sort of prize, but we're not going to do that. Because we don't give out prizes around here.
The prize is following us on TikTok.
It's its own word.
Yeah.
Little thing about before you play the fanfare, I agree with you. We need to get going quick on this one in particular, but just in general, this is it's a kind of a 3-part thing. We think that third part is dubious as to what we're able to cram in there or not, but I really do think it's going to be 3 episodes about the Alien franchise proper, starting out with today, which is dedicated exclusively to Ridley Scott's 1979 film. You know, it's a special film that everything has been said about already. We just a quick acknowledgement that I don't know how much insight you're going to get from us. It's going to be more of a celebration of what it is. Right. And we'd certainly have some behind the scenes stories and trivia and bits we'll share, but you know, the films, there's multiple versions of all these movies. They've all been at your disposal for years. There are feature-length documentaries about even the worst of them available. They were made by Charles, I'm going to say his name wrong, but Lazurka.
He's a buddy of mine. I should have gotten him on.
He's simply the best long-form movie documentary maker that ever existed and will likely ever exist. His behind-the-scenes things that he does are amazing. And the Alien, all these films, they all have one. They're stunning. And then, you know, multiple commentaries by the people actually involved. Not, no offense, but not the Scream Factory ones where they got the gaffer's assistant sister-in-law to share what she thought about some bit of minutia in the film. Or like Michael was getting real excited about Howard the Duck, but that it literally features nobody that did much of anything on the movie of any kind. And at this point, people aren't interested in doing those. But 12, 15 years ago, literally everybody who was still around that worked on these stepped up and threw in their 2 cents. The only one who sat out that experience for those docs was David Fincher. It just was too painful for him to go back and revisit his experience. But everyone else showed up. And we just saw it a couple years ago. This is the 35th anniversary of the release of Aliens, the 1986 release. And we saw them at a con sometime just before COVID, before Bill Paxton passed away.
Yeah.
That the whole crew for that film was on a panel, and that's out there. You just go watch that. So there's so many great things to go see. And even though we're glad you tuned in here, and we're glad you're going to hear our take on Alien. We definitely have one. If it sparks your interest in it again to rewatch the movie, the thing I would encourage you, if you find yourself to be a super fan, is go out and find that extra content that's out there. You don't need to buy the big movie gift sets to watch those docs. I think they're all on YouTube where you just click and find them. The one for Alien, Before We Start, I can't remember what it's called. Whoops.
Well,
I know what the one for Aliens is called. The one for Alien, I can't remember what it's called. Sorry, but we'll post that or something so you can get a look at it. I just wanted to say that it's, you know, we did a Jaws episode and we've done some iconic stuff. I think the three of us, I'm very proud. I feel like we did the best related fan content you're ever going to see. But
yeah,
for
frankly,
Alien,
good luck
if anyone
else wants to try to take that on.
We're just a drop in the ocean, honestly.
Yeah.
And we invite you. We invite you into the ocean with the rest of us. It's a really cool place to be. So that's all I can say.
All right. Well, let's get going on this thing so I could torch this movie. Piece of crap.
Right. Jeez.
All right. Here we go.
Do a deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive.
I have to do a deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive.
I have to do a deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive. Deep dive.
Quick correction: a few episodes ago, I said that was Charlize Theron. That's Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell. Sorry.
Oh. There you go.
Well, before we dive deep, I want to show my Nostromo t-shirt. And this explains how deeply my love for this film goes and for this franchise. Because this is a sleepy shirt that is ill-fitting and stretched out beyond belief. I actually asked my husband, is it reasonable to put this on? Because I don't want to look like a goon. But I'm like, you know what? I got to show my love regardless of this being pit-stained and just having slept in for years. So that's how much I'm willing to put it on the line for these films. So,
and me, of course, I am sporting my chest bursting corgi, which of course is canon. All right, folks, here we go. We're going to get into it. It is Ridley Scott's 1979 epic horror sci-fi masterpiece, Alien. All right.
Alien had a fun origin, right? The technicians and design people, specifically most importantly, I guess we'll say, most significantly, Dan O'Bannon and Ron Cobb were working on Jodorowsky's Dune, which we talked about in our Dune deep dives. Go check those out. They're a lot of fun. And that never came to be. That was a thing where a bunch of artists thought if they got together and just started working on something, it would miraculously get funding and it would be turned into a movie. And the funding never showed up because Jodorowsky's insane, and nobody he just had, for every cool idea he had an equally big deal breaker of an idea for a major movie studio. So he was not likely to ever get funded for that. But those guys were sort of left in the lurch right around this time. And another guy that they had come to know over there was this just incredible Swiss sort of modern artist, H.R. Giger. And they were all left without a home. And O'Bannon and Shusett had written, Ronald Shusett, they had written this, it's basically just a serious take on O'Bannon's Dark Star that he made with John Carpenter, that he started when they were students and then they finished it when they weren't students. O'Bannon's a very sardonic guy, and he says it's either the best student film ever made or it's the worst studio movie ever made. You just have to decide. And it's kind of weird, but he's not often, because a lot of the ideas in Alien that we love aren't his, and he's still, to the day he died, he was super against them. We don't give him enough credit for the foundation of this story. O'Bannon, and Shusett in particular sort of solved the issues of the alien life cycle. Ronald Shusett's not really a writer, but he's if you ever see him, he's this great guy who loves science fiction, which, and again, in the 70s was not there just was a different breed of person. And Ronald's enthusiasm for Dan's work, and the two of them just got along great. Because they were sort of the perfect yin and yang to each other. So to me, that's what makes this, that's where the genesis of this being a special thing is the alien's life cycle. Mm-hmm. It's so each step of the way, from a narrative standpoint, as you fit these ideas of this horrific stuff that happens out there in the insect and animal culture, in our own world. They just took all the most horrifying ideas they could find from nature and put it into this one thing. And that, combined with a really ambitious visual director who was in Ridley Scott, who was willing to take an extremely B-movie idea and elevate it to the level of this incredible A-movie work of art. And everybody was on the same page that even from the get-go, they all, even Walter Hill and David Giler, who are the producers, who are much more cynical fellows, especially Giler. I'll see if I can do my impression of him as we go through the episode a little bit. You'll definitely get one next week if you don't, so don't feel like, blah, blah, blah. Don't feel like you got robbed if I forget to do David Giler impression later in the show. But Giler
I'm going to work up an H.R. Giger impersonation.
Those are fun. He's a fun interview, Giger. He really is, because he's weird. He's one of those guys who brings his weird flamboyant girlfriend everywhere he goes. His cat is always with him. He's always dressed like this guy from like a Flash Gordon serial from the 40s. And yet when he talks, he's just this, you expect him to, even in his pictures, he's always frowning and his eyes are always darkened. But when he actually sits and talks about his work, he's like, ba 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 ba. He's like just this super excitable, enthusiastic dude. It's not what you expect at all, and that's one of the delightful things about it. Even with his sinister Swiss banker accent, he still is just like a kid who can't help. He's compelled to share his nightmares with us. I find that fun.
Real quick, the quintessential H.R. Giger impersonation is by a guy named Matt Gorley, who is an actor, and it's his H.R. Giger is spectacular.
The Hermannscher. The beasts would be called the Necromancercon, and all of them will have multiple holes, and like a dinosaur, he has come in a time of death.
So you're
That's pretty funny.
It's great.
That captures the speech patterns really, really
Mhm.
well. I still think it's missing some of the childlike wonder with which HR approaches the world.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem
there's
to be
other
part of
there's
that.
that's literally a random clip, and I'm so
That's a
happy he
bit
got
more
that,
sprocket for me
that he found because his whole basis was on it was how Giger says the word dinosaur.
Sour.
Yeah, it's
Dinosaur. Yeah, I love it.
He has the speech patterns down. That's an impressive impression.
But this is not the HR Giger deep dive. This is the Alien deep dive. I digress.
Yeah, but Giger's crucial to it. Again, you can't give him all the credit, but he's a crucial element to it. And the fourth element that I want to talk about from a design standpoint that doesn't often get nearly enough credit is Ron Cobb, who is the futurist who created this living, breathing workplace and space. Cobb is obviously, he's an extraordinary artist as far as this sort of comic book spaceship artist, but he comes from, unlike Sid Mead, who to me, Ron Cobb and Sid Mead are like the two guys. They're the two guys who draw stuff that's magic in the movies. Mead, though, is very much this comic book writer, and his stuff is very sleek and stylish and stuff. Cobb comes from the world of engineering. So everything he draws or everything he conceives of has some sort of purpose. And every little button or valve or switch or sign inside the spaceship in Alien, I don't know that you can say it has a purpose, but it has instructions. It has all this arrows and things. It's got everything that would make you think this place is run down as it is.
Right.
Everything has a function.
Well, that was one of the things that I noted this last visit just a week ago, sitting there watching just the detail on the sets and
stunning.
It's so, like you said, it breathes. It's like this place is real. And I think that's such a benefit to
it's
engulf
real.
you in
It's lived in that's my fit. If the Millennium Falcon, you can look at the Millennium Falcon and go, yeah, that's a smuggler's ship. That's where these guys live. And that's where they smuggle. Right. You absolutely, the Nostromo is absolutely a place of work, and
there's no
the
wonder
thing that
there.
the thing that I was like, when the first time you see it in this hulking beast of a thing, and you're like, it's got a crew of 7.
Yeah,
7, right? It's a mile.
You'd think that there you'd think that there would at least be 10.
But we never venture back into the refining part of it, the barge part of it. We're only ever in the little, the workplace, the towboat of it, basically.
Yeah.
But Cobb's work is amazing. It's brilliantly realized, in lighting by Derek Van Lint, and in the way it's shot by Ridley Scott, and in the way it was brought to life by production designer Michael Seymour and art directors Roger Christian and Leslie Dilley. These guys are all heroes of the movies. It's hard to explain, but I'm name dropping without being able to spend a lot of time on them, each of them. But the every crew, the focus puller, everyone who worked on this film continued into the world to make important works in our favorite genres of film. So it's worth at least pointing out that
the question is, who came up with the product placement for Purina? That's the question.
I can't say that for sure, but that feels like a Cobb thing. Yeah, Purina Alien Chow basically is the joke.
That's what they are. There you go. Yep.
Which is weird though, because the company logo is that weird late 70s rainbow logo that's on all their uniforms.
Oh, right.
The Weyland-Yutani, without the D, Weyland-Yutani logo is featured on some computer screens in some different places, but it's very hidden. No one says the name out loud or anything. But the company is all they call it. Exactly. So I'm not sure what the Purina thing even is. It's not the company logo. It's not the, you know what I mean? But it stands out. It definitely jumps out at you on those white doors, right?
Yeah.
And they got some, it's not a total oil refinery. They got some nice padded walls, and they got a nice little looks like a
nice padded walls.
Padded walls are nice.
Little asylum-y.
I know this has been covered ad nauseum, but watching this is
spread strategically throughout. That's good.
Yeah, but the fact that they have wasn't it? I believe, if I recall hearing this or reading it, that Scott was the one that wanted ceilings, right? Because he wanted that because you don't usually have ceilings on these massive sets.
No, he
but the
wanted
fact-
this stuff hanging down, and that stuff had to have a purpose. And
that's so you don't realize it until you really look at it. It's like that you never see the ceilings, you know. So it's to have that there. It is that wonderful bit of detail, but really just like you're sucked in. There's no way out.
He wanted it all lit practically too, like a real place, so that it was always lit, so that he could keep shooting. And they started out working that way, but it just looked too much like television, so they ended up lighting, and this slowed production down to a crawl, which got everybody, you know, very excitable, all the money people and stuff. It was Roger Christian, the guy who very famously directed Battlefield Earth or whatever, that terrible Travolta film, but who's been involved in these projects throughout, you know, all the years and stuff. He very famously said he didn't understand. Ridley, the whole time he was making Alien, had the money guys on set breathing down his neck, threatening to sue, complaining about every last thing. And Roger said, you know, it'd be one thing if we were wasting all this time and that the stuff we were giving them was crap, but it was beautiful. Anybody could look at it and see that the work was worth it, that the movie was working. Tom Skerritt, who rejected the script when his agent sent it to him, because the early script is extremely, it's all there, but it's very utilitarian and doesn't
it's
have
very
a lot of personality.
Star Beast. It's very Star Beast.
It's called Star Beast. He turned it down, and then they kind of came back to him later, and he said, "Oh, I like this better." And they showed him some drawings. They just showed him a sense of what it was going to be, and that got him on board, because all these actors, which is kind of interesting to me, were all recruited, even down to the smallest one, or the debut performer. And I guess we'll call this our transition into the crew. But Skerritt, like about a third of the way through working on it, went to Shusett and offered to give his fee back for a profit point and a half in the movie. He in that short time working on it came to believe it was really going to be an amazing thing. And if you talk to any of them, they all sort of believe that. The only one, you know, who's not super on the record about it is kind of Harry Dean Stanton. But that's a fun story too. When Ridley met with him to ask him to do the show, and he really wanted that earthy baseball hat trucker guy somewhere in this cast. He wanted to have that. And Harry Dean, I think, was their second choice. I think it was a British guy that they went to first. But once he kind of looked at him and got the idea of him in his mind as this character, he really wanted him to say yes. And he went to him, and the first thing Stanton says, like while shaking his hand, was, "No, like science fiction movies, and I like monster movies." And Ridley said, I don't either. But I think I can do something with this one. And that was just sort of it. That sort of brutal honesty between them, like, was this thing that brought them together. The fact that Scott didn't say, "Well, then screw you, Harry Dean Stanton, you know, what are you talking bad about our Alien?" He just was like, "No, I get it. I get where you're coming from. If you put a little trust in me, this one's going to be different."
Right.
Right. And we can all
well, because also, I mean, it is, I mean, and to that end, it's not a sci-fi film in the essence of look at the cool gadgetry, look at our advancements in blah blah blah. It's a workplace. It's a workplace. Everything about the whole ship, everything about the crew. These aren't, they aren't a family like a crew is like a family. No, these are coworkers.
Right.
And they're just like, we want our money. I need to do this to get paid. And
money's a big bone of contention between the different cats, like it always is.
You're guaranteed by law to get a share.
What?
Indeed.
So let's go through them in order. Let's kind of go through them in descending order. We started with Harry Dean Stanton. He's literally the lowest ranked guy on the ship. His boss and the chief engineer on the ship is played by Yaphet Kotto.
Parker.
Yaphet
Listen to me,
so
Parker. Sorry.
He's such a huge personality. He was told by Scott to come on really strong off the set with a couple of the other characters in the movie, which he later says he regrets because he really sort of admires them, even though I think they all kind of knew what was going on. They knew what he was doing. But Veronica Cartwright, one of the other actors, she tells these stories about Yaphet, about how, you know, half of everything he says is like, wouldn't be the same from take to take. The whole film is improvised a lot, and they've got, you know, Tom Skerritt's a Altman graduate, and they have this sort of perfect group of people to sort of make up stuff and improvise a ton, and a ton of the dialogue in the film is improvised. In fact, there are entire scenes that don't really make a lot of sense if you just look at them line to line, you know. Yeah, Brett and what's Yaphet Kotto's character's called?
Parker.
Yeah, Parker. They have this whole exchange. Well, I never should have landed on this damn ball, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Never should have came to this place in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like on the page. What is this? Who wrote this?
Yeah, you would go, take another pass at that. I like your idea. Take another pass.
But it's not on the page. In the mouths of these guys, and in their sort of weird rhythm, their sort of weird buddy rhythm that they have. On film, it actually works pretty good.
Yeah.
The film's full of that, you know, which is everybody loved the story, but nobody loved the script, basically. And they didn't treat the script with a whole ton of respect, and as far as they just matched the things. And O'Bannon and Shusett, when they wrote their first draft of it, essentially were like, they tried to write it in this high-minded, poetic way. All the characters were really smart. They're all very articulate. The science is it's all there on the page.
Right.
That just felt like a bit of a chore to read, even though the plot mechanisms were fantastic. They were the ones who originally said, we wrote these characters, you know, they are sort of their duties, and so we wrote them in this unisex way. Feel free to make them Black, Asian, male, female, do whatever you want with them, basically, which is a really weird note to have at the beginning of a script. Michael, would you ever write a script where you're like, just change everything in my script?
No.
And even with the knowledge that they were going to do that anyway,
right?
I would never invite them to do it. So in a way, it was good. These two guys who founded this thing came into it thinking this thing has room to grow. It has room for everybody to contribute, basically, and they did.
Well, I love the fact that you said it was all kind of poetic, high jargony.
Yes.
You know, because I did that movie Space, and I had to do a bunch of that crap not crap, but it's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's
technical dialogue. They call it.
But what I love, I was just thinking about when they're doing all the landing and everything on LV-426, and I appreciate that all the actors sold it. The dialogue, when they're talking about, and I don't even remember the lines, but when they're all in their position and they're landing and and they're, just hit this button and all this. Yep. That's always important to me. And the fact that Alien gets it right, I think, is one of the reasons that you get so completely sucked in, because you never question what they're saying. You might not understand it, right, but it's like, oh, I'm buying this. They're doing their job. They're, that's rare, because there are a lot of movies that the people don't properly sell it.
A goofy bit of trivia that's not part of these documentaries that may be interesting to people or not, but they wired those, again, this I got from Roger Christian, they wired those workstations in the cockpit of the ship, with the crash helmets up behind them. They wired them so that if one person pushed something or flicked something, some light someplace else and someone else's station would come on, and that would cue them to do this. And they would sit there even when they weren't on film, and they would play these little relay read and react games. And that ultimately, then what you get very little of it on screen, but what you do get is this sense of purpose in their movements and everything else that really, really adds to the reality of the situation, to the reality of a fantastical situation.
Yeah. And it also shows they're competent at their jobs.
Yeah.
And that had, we're not going to be watching the adventures of this misfit crew,
right,
who somehow make it. No, these are people that, they go out, they've done this 100 times before.
Yeah.
They fly out, they mine ore, and they come back, and they get their money, and blah blah blah. These are essentially blue collar workers.
Yeah,
truckers in space. That's what
truckers in space. And they're competent. They're good at their jobs. And so, like, there's all the kibitzing and all the they're kind of jabbing at each other and jawing at each other over while they're eating or sitting around in the thing.
Right.
When it comes to
that's not our system.
I was just going to bring it up. I'm sorry to interrupt, Joel, because that is one of those things. Now you've got me questioning every single line in the film. Was this improv or was this written?
A lot
because
of it
because that is one of my favorite moments, because in those 2 lines of dialogue, you have
The relationship between those
encapsulated
two
Lambert's
women.
and Ripley's characters. You have exactly what they are, and you know exactly how they look at each other. And that makes me wonder, was that just on the fly? But that's so beautiful, and you don't need anything. You don't get any history how many times they've worked together. The only information you get is that Ash, this is his first time out with this crew. So I love things like that. We've talked about this, I think.
And that Parker and Brett make less money than everybody else.
Exactly. Right. But it's like to get that amount of information in 2 lines of dialogue, like I've mentioned in other episodes, is like, that's so beautiful.
There's another moment too. We need to go through the crew in order, so we hit all of them and their strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. But there's another great movie that's just like that one you said, where
I know that.
That's awesome. I totally agree. There's another one which isn't quite as interpersonal, so it doesn't seem as interesting in the film. But it's where Kane says, "Well, I volunteered to go in the first group out," and Tom Skerritt goes, "Yeah, that figures."
Yep.
That just tells you everything you need to know about Kane and sort of their relationship. Yeah. Kane. Well, I'll just skip ahead a little bit since we're at that moment. We'll skip Veronica for a second. We'll come back to her though. She's super special. Kane they were interested in John Hurt for that role, but John had agreed to do Zulu Dawn down in South Africa. And then the clearances came back from the South African government and they banned him. And he said he didn't quite understand why. He was against apartheid, but he wasn't like an activist or anything. He assumes that he got mistaken for John Hurt, who was a major sort of hippie activist actor against apartheid and pretty much everything. He was a big time outspoken guy in the late 70s and early 80s. So suddenly he found himself available. But at that point, they'd cast John Finch, who had just been in Hitchcock's Frenzy, and he'd played the main role in Polanski's Macbeth. He was a real, very accomplished actor. And when he got rid of his mustache, no offense, Michael, when John shaved his sort of, I don't know what you call it, his signature mustache, that was his look. He just was this really good looking guy. He was this really popular in high school looking dude. And there are pictures of him sitting there in his chair. He's only on set for a day or so because he had super bad complications due to diabetes, which made him have to leave the set and be hospitalized for a few days. Finch looks like the heroic, good-looking guy that everybody has a crush on and everybody likes. And whereas Hurt plays him more like this quizzical sort of librarian type guy who has a sense of adventure for sure, but is more, ooh, look at this. Let's pick up this poisonous spider and play with it and see what happens. He has that sort of, you know what I mean? Like mad scientist kind of approach to the guy. Finch would have been different. He really would have been the traditional leading man that you would have been stunned would have been taken out of the film early. Right. Because he feels like he has the potential to save the day. Scott would have liked to keep Finch on the project because they were getting on pretty well, but he just couldn't. He was losing days. He was losing time, and heard that Hurt was available and drove up in the middle of the night when they weren't shooting, drove up to his house, pitched the project to him, and Hurt said, yeah, okay. I was hemming and hawing about it. I was looking forward to going fishing or something, doing anything with my time off here. But his enthusiasm for it brought him into the project.
Isn't it fascinating, though, that, I mean, as legendary as Hurt's career is, I think this is his signature role. I mean, other than maybe Elephant Man, but I mean, like when I think John Hurt, I think this. Yeah. And I'm pretty well versed in his stuff, but it's like, I don't think of anything else but this, and it's a supporting role, right? So. Yeah,
but it's what's required of him in the film is big. It's really, really important. It's a major part of what makes the whole thing work. Each of these crew members are equally important, really, but But what Kane goes through as a character is it's integral to the horror of the thing, and that's key. You know,
Some
we
sort
won't
of
get
an
into
egg
the
or something.
semantics about science fiction horror. I
Yeah.
think if it's in space and it's aliens, it's primarily science fiction. But in this case, the balance is like just pretty much 50-50.
Well, that's what people have talked about for decades in this, that it's a haunted house / whodunit. You know, and it's like not whodunit in the fact that you know who did it, but it's the way that people are wandering off alone, and then they, you know, have to kind of deal with the consequences.
It's 10
Yeah.
little. It's as Scott described it. It's like 10 little Indians.
7 little Indians. Yeah.
Or 7 little Indians, whatever it is.
And the main draw for the horror is and in the editing you see this is Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He wanted the horror to be that impactful.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of lessons from that. He made a much bloodier film in the end, Ridley.
Yeah.
Than Tobe did. But that something happens and whack, you're out of that scene immediately. Like that sort of thing. That's all in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That relentlessness of mood and terror, you know. Anyway, Veronica Cartwright is Lambert. Veronica didn't read for Lambert really. Lambert's a wisecracking sidekick in the script. And most of that is gone. She's turned into it. She still has a sharp sort of wit to her, but she's a much more negative person rather than a jovial, fun to have around, joking person.
Yeah.
But she read for, and part of her audition process, she read for Ripley, I think exclusively. And when she showed up, she thought that's who she was playing. And she didn't know until the costumer told her when she was trying stuff on which part she had. And even then she's like, oh, this costumer just doesn't know what she's talking about. But then found out it was true. And so she had to do this she had to adjust on the fly to the idea that she wasn't playing this other character. Which I think is, I think that's an amazing story. Well, who forgot to tell her what part he was playing?
I can't see Veronica Cartwright as Rip. I mean, I guess with Weaver, you can't ever unsee that, but.
Right. I think that's a big part of it because I think Veronica's capable of doing that. Veronica throughout the 70s, up until this point, had played a lot of sort of flaky, ditzy, like, what's your sign sort of 70s girls, basically. I don't want to totally pay on her as that because she's got a wide, varied career. But her take on Lambert, even though she's this terrified person, she really is the only person reacting to this in an emotionally open way. Like it's all her terror and fear is all there on the surface. That's her utility in the story. But Lambert's a serious person who gets real serious about this stuff real fast. And Veronica's career trajectory turned into playing more of these ice queens and this other different types of roles that are really sharp and harsh, and I think that's kind of fun.
I think Veronica Cartwright, I consider her one of my favorite actresses. I think that she's so undersung in her abilities. I mean, and I think back to how many genre films I consider favorites, and she's in them. I mean, The Birds, Body Snatchers, Witches of Eastwick, all of these things, and I never quite understood why her star wasn't just huge because she's so gifted. And like you said, it's like her reactions as Lambert, it's painted on her face. I mean, her eyes are constantly swollen and red because she's always crying, you know?
I think at a certain age, Veronica, it was just too interesting a person to be cast in conventional leading person roles, ultimately.
Yeah.
You mentioned Eastwick, you mentioned all these films. You never look at them and go, she should have been the star of this. She's always right in the exact part she needs to be in. That is why she's great. She's a female character actor, which is a rare breed of thing. The world is packed to the rafters with male character actors who are weird, quirky people. Veronica is she's an amazing actor because she's incredibly brave in the ugliness and the sort of dark side of these people she plays that she shares them with you. A lot of movie stars don't want to do that. They were advocating for their characters. Veronica does a good job of that too. She's always on the side of her character, but she really is brave enough to show you the not so, the undignified side of the person she's playing. What a great actor is, really, to be willing to be able to do that.
the interesting
to sacrifice some dignity and glamour.
Yeah.
To get to the heart
No,
of what an
she's
actual person.
she's ragged on screen. I mean, particularly in this, and I wanted to point out the fact that I think her best moment is when she doesn't even appear. It's her final sound as Lambert, which is genuinely upsetting.
Yeah, that's not
and
her.
It's not her?
No.
Who is it?
We can get to
Some
when we get to the
rando?
ending. We'll get to the ending, but I'll
now I'm upset.
I'll tell you how that was written and what was done.
Oh, that bums me out. I kind of always thought, wow, she's in some.
Hey, imagine you shot an entire ending for your character, and then you showed up on premiere night and saw what the director thought happened to your character. And it had nothing to do with what you agreed to do or whatever.
Okay.
It's actually a bait and switch of sort of a colossal kind, and Veronica's still not over it. She's still kind of pissed about it.
Interesting.
I think she does a commentary. She offers herself up to talk about this stuff, but she's a sharp lady. She will tell you what she thinks. There's absolutely nothing censored about her, and she'll tell you what she thinks about the end of the fate of her character.
Interesting. Okay. Well, now I've got to go. Okay. All right.
So that's not her.
All right. So we have we've done Parker, we've done Kane, we have done Brett. We've technically done Brett.
Yep.
Lambert. Let's do Ash.
Yeah, Ash. We sort of skipped. Kane is second in command on the ship,
Right.
so just so you know, we're sort of going a little out of order here. But yeah, Ash, the science officer, first time science officer. Still
The
collating.
A2s always were a little bit twitchy.
Yeah, they were. He's Sir Ian Holmes, Sir Ridley Scott, Sir John Hurt. I wonder if we'd have went back in 1979 and told all these guys they were going to be knights of the Royal British Order, if they would have, if a single one of them would have believed us. Probably not. But whatever. Maybe they would have. Who knows? Ridley's got a pretty high opinion of himself. I don't know what to say about Ash. We're going to get into the plot of what his utility is, but Ash is the character that isn't in the first draft of the script. He's not even a different character that they changed. He's literally not there. It's 6 people in O'Bannon and Shusett script.
Really? Okay.
Ash is a creation of Walter Hill and David Giler. David Giler is the co-screenwriter on The Parallax View, a 70s conspiracy film. And the idea of the evil company, the duplicitous mainframe computer, and Ash, the company shill, we'll call him for now until we find out what he really is. Because even when we find out what he really is a company shill. That's all he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's there to explain the guidelines and the rules and the regulations. He explains to Parker when Parker's having a fit about going down to this weird planet that the rules say you signed your contract. Your contract states you don't do what they say, you don't get paid when you come home.
Ash's best moment is when he's talking to Parker about that. There's this little tiny, you can hear him say it, but he says something like, "Is it okay to you?" Kind of like a,
Well, he says total forfeiture of shares, and then he mouths the words, "No money."
That's the one. That's the line. It's
no money, and actually you can hear him say that, but it is very under his breath.
Yeah.
No money.
But it's his expression. Yeah.
He knows that's Parker. That's it. That's the thing. That's the thing that settles this. Even your pittance that you are complaining about getting, you still want every penny of that. All we've heard Parker talk about is money up until this point.
Right.
So that moment works great. And Ian Holm, we talked about him in our best Ian Holm performances. Ash is a singular achievement on screen. It's hard to pick a favorite. It's impossible to pick a favorite in Alien, but Ian's performance, if I had to pick one, is my favorite performance in the film. Out of the actors, he's just, everything he does is kind of amazing. The clip we played at the beginning of the show, just the way he stutters and how he drops a line and picks up a line at a certain point. That's not written that way. That's all in the service of making this guy sort of real, making him twitchy without making him a caricature. Everything he does on camera, he just is incredible in the film. I just really dig him.
I realized on this most recent screening that line, and I'm sure the comma yes at the end of that delivery, was just came out of him, but I realized I've used a comma yes in so much of my dialogue and my writing. And I know it comes from that. I know it. It's like, it's just, that's such a perfect, and
he
it's
does
such a
that throughout the
character
movie. That's
thing.
an idiosyncrasy of Ashes. He ends with comma yes.
And it's so beautiful for the character.
And it's not comma yes, you may continue. It's comma yes, end of argument almost every time when he uses it, which I'm sure is how you use it as well.
Yes.
Yes, which means shut up now. I don't know. It's really great.
I love the moments leading up to, you know, the big revelation about Ash, but I think what stands out to me in his performance, I don't even remember where it comes in the film, but that weird little, he does the little weird
it's
jog.
It's right before
the clip that we're talking about.
Yeah, right before the clip that we
and
played.
I'm just like,
as they're getting ready to go down to the ship.
But as like an audience member first seeing that, I mean, because you have no knowledge of where that's going to go. So I'm curious what people were like, what in the F was that? You know, like it's so creepy and weird and unknown. And I don't know. I think that's one of my favorite moments. And I'm curious again, now that you've
none of us can go back and watch that moment for the first time and remember exactly what we thought when we saw it. But I really don't think it stands out much. You're in this spaceship, you're cramped up. He just sort of works his joints for a second.
Yeah,
but Michael, what you're
getting
saying
the blood
is correct.
flowing. It's getting the blood flowing. It's psyching himself up. It's getting in the zone.
I see it more as an inkling into.
No, you're right. That is what it is. I'm saying we all have the benefit of hindsight now.
I get
it.
I really don't think you remember what you thought when you first saw that.
I do.
Didn't know what was going to happen. When I first saw that, I'd been spoiled on basically the whole movie, so I knew what was going to happen. That's an actor thing. He just told Scott, he said, I'm going to do this thing. And he's like, you think that's cool? And he's like, yeah, that's great. Do that. You know, they all brought those sorts of things to their character. No more than Ian Holm. When he chooses to smile, when it's least appropriate, when he chooses to do all this weird stuff, it
is a fantastic performance. And I think that, I'm curious how much, not to get too far ahead, but I'm curious how much Henriksen studied that. Like
he studied it completely,
you know, and because it is such a beautiful.
We'll get to that
transition.
next week.
But it's interesting because there's so much to pull from that.
He studied every second of it. I know that for a fact.
Interesting.
So do we go with the captain? Do we go with the captain and Nostromo, or
we've already talked about Captain Dallas? We talked about Tom Skerritt. Tom Skerritt plays Captain Dallas as this laid back, like you would expect, this shop foreman of a guy who just let's all get along. Let's just get us from this thing to that thing. He's not a commanding presence of authority. At the same time, Skerritt's internal sort of integrity that he brings to each role gives you the sense that you're in good hands with him.
Sure.
And I think the movie makes really good use of that. I think changing Kane from a matinee idol to a sort of quirky butler type of character, you really need the heroic part transferred to the top billed captain, Tom Skerritt. I think that really, really works for him. And Skerritt was the leader of that group of people. Let's all get together. Let's make this as great as we can. He was a true believer in the project, which is funny because he was the least, Harry Dean Stanton aside, he was the least enthusiastic about this when he was involved in the casting project. And yet when he came on set and he was working with these people, and he said he was so grateful for the freedom that they were given to create these characters. You know, he goes, Ridley was camera operating the whole time he was shooting the film. He really didn't have a lot of time for us. He didn't, you know what I mean? He wasn't there counseling us through the movie. We were left to figure it out on our own. But he said, but every time we wanted to try something, do something, every time we just did try something or do something, he was always on our side that was the right way to go about it. He said, they all said he could be pretty harsh when he didn't like what they were trying, but they all had to kind of get used to that.
But I think there's something inherent that you mentioned about Skerritt as a performer. I mean, I think it's the blue eyes. He's a handsome guy. There's a lot he brings to Dallas, and I think the character raises his voice once. I think when he tells "Let Ash finish," and the fact that he's so soft spoken.
Parker, will you listen to the man?
Yeah,
the exact line you're thinking of.
That he's so soft spoken, but that's what's so weird because you can see him constantly thinking. Certainly when he goes to Mother, you know, for suggestions before he goes into the air ducts. And he's so engaging, but there's no power to the character. But like you said, you still trust him. You still believe that he cares about. It's such an interesting kind of wishy-washiness to him, you know.
There's that great moment where you see him hiding from everybody on the shuttle, listening to classical music through the sound system, and that to me is the essence of the guy. You know, he is a competent leader. You see him deal with these confrontations and situations that arise, and he always deals with it in this calm manner. He sort of gets to what's going on. But what we really see is a guy who this really is just a gig. He's not interested in the ore, in the barge, in the refinery. He's just doesn't care. He's not engaged with that at all. This job's a means to an end to him. And every time, even when he's at his best, he has this sort of feel to him that is just really great. So it's really great. There's all this stuff in the character. It's a really outstanding performance by him.
It is, and it's nice to see him even in the final moments he's on screen. He still holds it together. He's like, I want to get out of here. You know, like he doesn't panic. He's like, I'm ready to go. And
he goes the wrong way, but he doesn't. He never.
It's not because of
he's
panic.
Like,
it's just, I think I want to get out of here.
I think I want.
But there's just that little tinge of he's right on the edge here, you know, and the fact that, you know, Skerritt controls it the whole time. I don't know. I think it's a really nifty kind of understated performance where there's a lot of heavies going on around him, you know.
Yep. And then last but not least
is this newcomer. It's her name is, I think I'm getting this right, Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, I've heard of her. She's done some stuff.
Yeah.
Sigourney
Weaver, of course.
What a debut. I mean, every time I revisit this film, it's so stunning to me. I not only physically, because she's so unique and so attractive, but I mean, the fact that she really brings it to this role. And I'm sure, Ryan, you can comment on this, that this was written as a man, but like you said, they kind of switched it all around.
It was written where it wasn't important, whether it be a man or a woman.
But I love the fact
But it's true that even the creators, even O'Bannon and Shusett, did not see this character as being switched to a female. In fact, had they been asked, and they weren't, but had they been asked, they would have been against that, because they were rather adamant that Kane be a man, so that the sexual and sort of rapey overtones of the creature and its life cycle would not be thrust on
a woman,
what they considered to be an easy horror movie victim.
Sure.
So it was and they wanted men to feel what they thought women experienced when they were watching these sorts of things. So that very specifically, that guy needed to be a guy. They thought equally cliched, although not as crucial to the story, but equally cliched was the woman, you know, running through the woods, panicked at the end of the thing.
Yeah.
So,
but the joy of having Sigourney Weaver have Ripley be a female is we get those, I'm assuming, unscripted moments between her and Dallas, which suggests that there's a relationship, which wouldn't have necessarily happened with a man.
The ones between her and Parker and Brett are not. Those are mostly just made up.
But I think that adds...
The job is to do what the hell they tell you to do.
Yeah.
Or take off without that. Well, how long have you even known that? That's all very scripted stuff.
But I love the fact you talked about kind of the introduction of the company kind of later in the process, and the introduction of Ripley as a female, how important those two things became for the franchise. That's what I think is so wow, well, that worked out well, didn't it? You know?
I said in the print review on the Facebook page, there's a lot of ways to do it. This is definitely one of them. This is a star-making performance. However they did this, they did it right. So a couple things about that. One, it's brilliant in the way the story sets her up. So Lambert doesn't like her. Parker doesn't like her. Brett doesn't like her. We're not really encouraged to like her at all until she does one key thing. She does that great thing where she says, "You're not bringing that shit in here. You're not bringing that in here." And every one of us in all the worldwide, every single person has the same reaction going, "You sing it, sister. They are not bringing that thing in here. We are all on the same page. We've all seen movies like this before. You are right. And from that moment on, even though
We're on board. Yeah.
we're on board with Ellen the whole time, she's not Ellen in the movie, she's just Ripley. None of them have first names in the movie, I believe. As a matter of fact, I think in the sequel, which we're trying not to get into, but in the sequel, when they flash the profiles of the guys up on the inquest board, their first initials -1 are all their actual first initials.
Oh, okay.
Which is an old way.
I read you. The answer is negative.
Right. The answer is negative. Even that is like, even her reading on that is kind of cold and awful, but
Well, it's that great
we
profile
know that
close up
where
of
the-
her. Yeah.
we know that's where the wisdom is. We know it in that moment, and I love that. A couple other things about her main competition for the part of Ripley was Veronica Cartwright. Her second main competition was other New York actor Meryl Streep. That's who it would have been if it wasn't Sigourney Weaver. So it's interesting to think about that.
Wow.
Meryl Streep had just lost John Casale. She just lost her husband,
Right.
and was still interested in doing the movie, but all sides basically agreed you should probably, this could be a long thing in another country. You should probably step back from this.
Oh my God.
And she was offered an equally lucrative thing in a smaller part in another film, and that was near home. And that was the way they decided to go. So really,
Was that
Meryl never
Kramer
had a
versus
chance
Kramer?
to really go head to head with Sigourney. She sort of backed off the project a little bit.
Was that Kramer versus Kramer?
I don't know. I can't say, but that's the timing would be right.
Yeah. But I think that the point of looking at Weaver's first performance is that it is one of those, she's a star. It's like, I'll repeat myself. My mind is blown that this is her first performance. And it's the fact that it would become her signature role. All of these things that came up out of this are just, what if Meryl Streep had gotten the role? Would it have continued?
Mm-hmm.
Because the dynamic would have been so different. And I don't know. Sigourney Weaver is just,
without buying into fate or karma or any of that stuff. This was meant to be. This was meant to be. It really does. Even if that's not true, it feels that way, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
The idea was never to cast big stars in this, but they were worried. The studio people were worried that he was casting somebody with only one other screen appearance and mostly only stage work in it. And so they put her through a rigorous process to get the role. She was cast at the last second, but she was part of the process the whole time. They made her shoot all these screen tests.
Yeah, I saw some of those.
They made her do all this stuff. Alan Ladd Jr., pretty much the greatest movie executive of all time. What a very clever thing he did was he took these screen tests that they shot and he brought out in Fox Studios, LA, the offices, he brought all the women in that he could find and sat them down in the conference room to watch her screen test. Just the women. And, Ridley Scott tells it secondhand because he wasn't there, but he says their reactions were, she reminds me of Faye Dunaway. She reminds me of Jane Fonda. Like they were all, just from looking at her or whatever, she had some sort of essence where she reminded them all these big star actresses of the day. And Ladd was like, so Ladd basically did what he did on Star Wars. He basically went to the money people and he said, we're going to support this decision. I feel, you know what I mean? He was a really great guy. He got Fox, even after all these hits, the string of hits he had for them, they canned him because he gave way too many profit points back to Lucas for Star Wars. And he left a lot of money on the table for the studio, essentially,
Right.
because he was such an advocate of artists and their ideas. But to me, this it shows you the core of who he is as a really, not just as this friendly guy that wants movies to have artistic integrity to them, but as a guy who's very shrewd in how he made this decision. He brought this impromptu test audience together,
Right.
and everything they said was right. Like, it was spot on. So he's like, all right. I mean, I know what I think. She looks good, but it doesn't matter what I think. This movie's costing us $20 million. Matters what everybody in the world out there is going to think.
Yeah.
He is very clever the way he did that. So
I guess they did okay then in that choice.
Yep.
Right.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the true villain of the piece,
Jones the cat.
which of course Jonesy the cat. This cats, as we know, are inherently evil, and this one just completely lures humans to their demise time after
He's
time,
just
and
too
then
fluffy and cute.
watches as they die. It's a sick beast.
He's played by 4 different cats in the movie, actually, 4 identical cats.
Yep.
Sigourney Weaver started reacting to the glycerin they were spraying on them. There's a great scene in Cheers where George Wendt and John Ratzenberger are arguing over what is the sweatiest movie of all time. It's just one of those barstool conversations, obviously, which is apparently sort of made up by them. They settle on Cool Hand Luke, but Alien is like in the conversation as sweatiest movie of all time. It is really sweaty. And they had this glycerin stuff they kept spraying on them, and Sigourney had this reaction to it. And she thought she was allergic to the cat, and she was freaked out. She thought she was going to be fired because she thought she would be easier to replace than 4 identical orange cats.
Oh my God.
Like that was really, she was trying to hide it from the production staff. Like it was that kind of real fear. I'm going to be fired for this. And it turns out they just needed to spray her more often with something slightly less toxic than skin glycerin. But I find that story to be really funny and amusing.
It's funny. I didn't realize. Yeah, you're right. How sweaty it is. You said that, and my immediate thought is when she kind of comes up over the thing, and like she's just soaked.
It's and Brett, and they're dripping sweat in these scenes. Dallas in the air shafts. Yeah. Sweaty movie, no question.
Yep. Let's talk about the sweaty ship. This is a ship that it apparently has a dripping water problem. It's like,
well, that's condensation on the landing gear from the elements that it took in from where the planet it had just been on.
And
which is very cold, and they describe it. It's very icy, and when the ice melts, when the landing gear goes up back into the ship. So that's what the chains and the dripping is all about in that chamber.
I would never have known that. I just thought it.
Did you know? I didn't know for a long time until I saw it in widescreen that was even where they were, in a landing gear chamber. I just
because this last screen, I'm like, where are they? What is this? What is this? I thought it was something with the mining.
It's pretty
operation.
clear. They show it. You look up and you
I didn't track.
see.
I was too busy watching Harry Dean Stanton.
Yeah, but that
film, cursing Jonesy is really what
that film on HBO cut in half is this gray mess, mushy thing of a film. Whereas you see it now restored, and you can really see where they are. You've seen the landing gear before, so when you look up and see it hanging there, you get what it is.
Yeah.
None of that's explained.
I watched.
The suits wanted dialogue to explain why the chains and the water dripping was there, and Ridley explained it to him. And when that explanation was like, well, you either need to have a character explain that or this, he was just like, he basically stopped replying to their messages. And it was one of the producers who was like, I don't remember who, but it was one of the guys who was like, guys, even if you don't understand what it is, it's an atmosphere thing. Let the artist sort of do his thing.
Yeah,
they'll get Harry Dean Stanton. Get Harry in post to ADR and have him go. Jonesy always running into the landing dock.
It's funny
area.
That the producer in this case told the suits it doesn't matter, and yet all these years it's a very common question. Where is he? Why is it dripping? Why are all those chains in there? People still those suits weren't wrong. Humanity asks those questions and
I just assumed it's like the fact that at the end Ripley's like, "Mother, I turned the coolant back on." I just assume it was condensation from coolant somewhere. I'm like, I never questioned it beyond this conversation.
That producer is right. It doesn't matter.
It's really a giant landing gear chamber.
I say we spend another 10 minutes on this.
All right.
We need to move through the blow by blow of the story. I have it written down that we're talking about Nostromo, but we've talked enough about it. I think
LV-426 is the planet that they're on their way home, and they're woken up prematurely. That's where we're and they're woken up prematurely because they're in like a cryo sleep to to get them.
That was
home.
a hard R-rated movie, and I understand why they didn't want everybody's wangs flapping around in that scene. But another thing the suits were really panicked about was that the women's like boobs were going to be seen and stuff.
Was it this? Did I see this in this last viewing that Sigourney had this across her nips, like just a little line of fabric?
It's tape is what it is, but yes.
Wow.
They both have it, but you really only see it on
You only
Sigourney.
see Sigourney, yeah.
Yep. What isn't that weird? Why can't their boobs just be seen? I mean, I'm not. Joel and I talk about this all the time. I'm very puritanical. I don't want to see a bunch of boobs when there's no reason for them. But this feels like an organic place. It's not sexualized. There's nothing exploitative about it. It really does feel like that's how you would have to go about this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird that of all things they would be in a film
Concerned
like this,
about,
in a hard R-rated gory movie, that they would be like, no nipples. It's just odd to me.
Yeah, I agree.
But
well, I think that's the first time though that I've actually noticed there was something on Sigourney. Like as I'm looking at it, I'm like, huh? Like I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Look, as you froze the frames.
Watch it on TV. I
advanced...
watched it always. Watch it on TV. Watch it on VHS, span and scan. Watch it in widescreen. You know, ultimately even on VHS. Watch it somewhat restored on DVD. Watch it really restored on DVD. Watch it in HD. Each step you get in the experience of watching Alien brings out the magic of Alien. You really do get to watch it again for the first time, at least in those ways.
Yeah.
Did you stream it?
I streamed it on Amazon, had it in 4K, and I watched it in 4K.
And it looked amazing, am I right?
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was just,
how'd you watch it, Michael? Just curious.
I think it was
Have
on
a
Amazon
DVD
Prime.
of it? Or?
Well, we ended up watching. No, it was streaming. So I think it was Amazon
So you
Prime.
were watching it in high definition. It makes a difference. You really do notice these things in a way you don't. So, cool. That's just interesting to hear.
So they're looking. They don't realize right away when they get up. They're like, "That's right, we're home. We're here. We go. We're gonna get." And then they're like, "Okay, let's get to work." And then they realize, "Hey, we're not remotely close to Earth."
I know that.
Anyone know what's going on? And it's not our system. And Dallas goes to Mother. Mother is the sort of the central
Lambert is the
hub
navigator
computer.
of the ship, by the way. She does not like being told her job. That is sort of what's behind that.
Well, yeah, but that also explains why she's the third one that has to go out. Like, oh, why her? Oh, well, because
and
she
so
seems real happy about that decision too.
She sure is.
Yeah. So Mother, the computer has woken them up because protocol states if you receive a beacon essentially from a potentially intelligent of an intelligent origin,
you have to stop and investigate.
You got to take a
Company
look.
policy.
And so they come upon this planet LV-426, and
it's actually Archeron is the name of the big planet with the rings around it. And and they never call it LV-426 in Alien. That is what we've known it. That's what we know it that it has become. Its numerical name. But it's this moon of this giant gas ring planets. Really that part of the film is really gorgeous. Those old school opticals, because they don't shoot the ship with motion control cameras. And after you've had Star Wars, just slowly panning a camera across the ship. Like the ship's landing sequence is fun, but they really go from starting out in the atmosphere to being 12 feet from the ground with very little in between. And it's because they really didn't have the technology to show us this thing flying through the air. It's this giant model that they put in the soundstage that they could move the camera around, and that's pretty much it. They get a lot of mileage out of that, but I've always thought the landing sequences, it really does go from them turning in space to resting upon the Earth with no sense that time has passed.
Certainly when you compare it to the landing in Aliens, I mean, that's intense.
Well, the landing in any, like I say, what I compare it to is the Star Wars films, which came out a couple years earlier. This was done in a super old school way. The only way to do more would be to put something on a wire or something, and that would have looked like ass. So they just chose not to show us that part. But no motion control hurts the movie because some of the effects are clunky relative to what we're used to, even from that era. Models are brilliant, but you know what I mean? The sequences themselves have to be sort of edited with magic and sound together because they're really not showing you a lot of
Right.
a lot of movement. It spinning in space has a sort of balletic beauty to it and stuff.
But it's funny you say that. I'm sorry, Joel. I know you want to move on, but I think it's interesting about the tone and the pace of the film. Like you said that we kind of expect more even at that time in film. But even watching it recently, I loved this, like you said, the kind of balletic motion of everything. It feels appropriate to the film.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe it's because I'm just used to it and I understand that's what it is, but I never longed for more. You know, I always feel like
I don't know that I do
appropriate to the
either.
pacing.
I just feel that there's this whole sequence about coming down to the planet that we're not privy to, and that's weird. You don't go from starting into the atmosphere to being near the ground. You have to fly.
We get a lot of internal
somewhere.
cutaways of everyone doing their jobs, right? I mean,
Sure, but there's no sense that time has passed in there.
No.
It feels like that sequence is done in real time. It's not really a criticism, dude. I agree with you. What's there is great. What's there is what they had to work with, and Ridley's really innovative, and he uses it all as much as he can.
Yeah,
and he's very wise to not go beyond what its usefulness is and make it look stupid.
And you know, and then it is that pacing thing, because at this point, as an audience, first time, you don't know what they're going to find. You have no idea what's down there, and so
pretty much
it
the
kind of
movie's
lends
called
more to
Alien.
that.
You've seen stuff in the
but
commercials.
the mystery of how they're going to find it. I mean, how Kane's going to be impregnated. All of that we are not privy to yet.
And the how is
and there's a terrific bait and switch that happens right at this point, because the landing party lands, and let's see, we know that Lambert is in this party, Kane is in this party, and Dallas, right? That am I remember that correctly?
Who go out walking.
Yeah,
they're
the ones who
of the atmosphere of the planet, and Kane says, "Hey, this thing's only about a mile away. We could walk it."
Yep. And so they go. They're on their way, and they kind of come over this ridge, and you see a ship.
Yeah.
A legit.
That looks legit alien, right? Is that what you're about to say? I mean, it looks like nothing we would build.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very, very cool.
And so it's like,
it's a terrifying reveal. Oh my God. It's so creepy.
Well, this sequence,
because it totally looks like the rocks, but doesn't, that it's surrounding, you know, it's creepy.
Yeah. Well,
this
whole sequence to me,
all built in, and then you get that curve, those great curves.
This is where Alien achieves its legend. From when that team comes down that elevator to the surface, to when they come back. To me, that this whole it captures, it's where the science fiction happens. It captures the wonder and mystery of being in this unknown world with this incredible thing. As they board this little ship, they come into this room, right? This chamber, the cockpit with this weird thing sitting in the center of it. And this was a thing again, too, the money folks really wanted to cut this sequence. They're like, this is the biggest set in the whole movie, and it's on screen for like 2.5 minutes. It's just a stupid waste of resources. And it was Ron Cobb who made the case finally to somebody, because they were fighting about it the whole time. And he said, this is it. This is your Cecil B. DeMille shot. This is the one thing that is going to turn this movie into a cheesy B movie into something where the audience knows they are seeing something special. They're a part of something that's way better than any version of the same kind of thing that they've ever seen. And that's why you have to have it, because it delivers on that.
Yeah, and
Ridley Scott uses his two kids and the cinematographer's kids in these little suits to make the landing gear look twice as big as they are. He does the same thing when the bodies first come into that room where the space jockey's sitting in this weird chair. It's these kids, so it makes the thing just feel massive.
Yeah, and you're like, and again, like I said, it's a bait and switch, because you're seeing this alien creature that you're like, what is that? Is that our titular alien? Right. Okay, wow, this is going to be bonkers. That thing is huge, and
all these ways that the little observations they say, and this is where O'Bannon shoots its script really works. This is all basically left alone. That it looks like it's growing out of the chair. These bones are bent outward. These weird things that they notice about this that tell us everything we need to know, and yet we still are kind of like, what are we seeing? We don't really know. It's a weird alien thing.
The two joys of this whole sequence for me is how slow Scott takes it all. I mean, a current film would be like click, 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 editing all over the place. That he kind of goes around it really slowly.
Yep.
And the fact I think Lambert says 3 or 4 times, let's get the hell out of here.
Right.
Which is
Mhm.
exactly what we're thinking. I mean, it so
Right.
beautifully matches up to the audience's reaction of what we're seeing. Because at this point, you're still like, what is going on? Because the thing looks sort of human in the face. Like, I don't, it's really unnerving. And I mean, he captures it so well that you are like, let's go, just go.
And
go,
even
go,
in
go.
this sequence, there's a ton of compromises with the set and stuff. The set of the space jockey, the cockpit of the thing, and the set below of the egg chamber is pretty much the exact same set, just with a different. Down below, there's a different matte painting that gives it this totally different sense of scale.
Right.
But the wall's the same, the ground is the same. Like everything's kind of, a little hollowed out. Like they just had to make use of with what they had. Giger was the only time he lost his temper during the making of the film was when they replaced the background of his space jockey set with the background from the egg chamber set, because he's like, that's different. It's a different alien. He was just very regimented in his thinking about
Yeah.
this guy and that thing. Yeah, so
Dinosaur.
he was really worked up, and Ridley said, same as he said to Harry Dean
I
Stanton, he's like,
understand.
you know what? I think we'll make it work. Just basically like he didn't have any choice, and Giger's got this great thing. He's got a diary of his experience working on Alien. And he just says, he goes, it's kind of amazing. When you saw the shot of the thing, he does make it work. He takes a flat wall in a round room where the 2 design elements are completely different, and it still looks awesome. He goes, he's like, I was so grateful that I was working with these wonderful people, all this, he just does this rant where he felt something he had worked on had been completely compromised, and yet it works in the film anyway.
But I don't think any audiences, I don't think we'd seen anything like this, because
No.
spaceships are always metallic, and something that looks like an organism is so
made out of
must have been
bones
mind-blowing.
and glue.
Yeah,
It's
and-
crazy. It's a weird black log cabin of a thing in space. It's really nuts, and I love it. I agree.
Yep.
It's awesome.
So as they're exploring, they're looking around. They're exploring.
Although,
can
I say one more thing?
jockey.
If you see Geiger's original model, the round wall where the floor matches the walls, it's you can see what he had intended, and it is amazing. He has a little scale model of it, and they were in the middle of building it. They built part of it already before they just said, we have to stop, shoot this, move on. So he's right. He's not wrong, but it doesn't matter to us. In all these years, it doesn't matter. That sequence is still perfect.
Yeah.
Kane has kind of continued searching through the exterior, or not the outer areas of the room, while Lambert and Dallas are looking at the we'll call him space jockey. I like that.
That's what he's. I mean, again,
yeah.
that's canon now, but that's what the crew called him. That's
Sure.
where that name came from. Face
so
hugger,
Kane-
chest burster. These names all came from what the crews called this stuff on the
Right.
call sheet. It's kind of
Right.
fun that those names stuck through other movies.
and
Space
Kane
jockey.
discovers. So Kane comes across this room that is just sort of filled with a whole bunch of large sort
Leathery
of egg
objects, like
potties,
eggs or
Yeah,
something.
something. Yeah.
and you get this is your first real moment of give
And
it
a thin layer
is
of
where you-
mist that reacts.
Well, no,
when
realize
broken.
that there's something alive
that's something
here.
in it that moves. Yeah, that move. I'm gonna cough. I apologize. Hold on a second here. And we get so we have and you're watching and you see this little thing move through the membrane of the egg, and Dallas is talking, he's analyzing, or not Dallas, but Kane is he's analyzing, he's doing
Wait,
everything
there's
that
movement.
Yep, and then all of a sudden you see it like a bloomin' onion at the Outback. It comes open,
But this
and
entire time, everyone is like, get out, get out. And I love the fact that we still get Kane, like you said earlier, Ryan. Kane is just like, I gotta know. oh, there's movement. This is
He
great.
leans into this creepy,
Like,
terrifying
get
stuff.
out. It's like, please go. Oh my
Well,
God.
yeah, I mean, it's you have the routine. These people they're doing their jobs. It's a routine. It is day after day. They're working, and all of a sudden they get.
I don't think even that's what's going on here at all. This isn't part of the routine. He's
No,
in a
no.
giant cavernous egg chamber.
No, that's what I mean. It's
He's
normally
excited
it's
for something
routine.
new.
So something is happening, and he is part of the
He has
first
been
contact
subtly
with
set
another
up as
alien.
that character.
Yeah.
But mostly it goes beyond that. We've talked about this before on the show, the three of us, and Rob was here, I think, too. But it's when we're talking about Stephen King. In this case, it's primal what we're experiencing. So the logic doesn't really matter. The Alien films and other films have tried to recreate this moment of the dumbass guy marching right into his doom cluelessly. And almost every time it doesn't work because you just can't believe the stupidity. Something about this sequence, I don't know what's different because it is stupid and we're still screaming, what are you doing? But in this sequence, that's part of the fun. We're all in on it together. We're all in this together.
It's
somehow.
Hurt's delivery. And I think exactly what you said before. It's the way his character has been set up. We are buying this. This guy's just got to know because he's gung ho. You already set up with the line of like, I'm out. I'll go.
Yeah,
it's like,
and
it's there. It's already there. So it's like, yeah, you're stupid, but yeah, we want to know too.
Because it's not hubris. Right. It's not hubris. It's curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's so overcome with his own curiosity. It's not, I got this. Oh, look at the movement.
Right. It's all of that, but it's more. It's the way it's edited. It's the way it's cut. It's the way the things are revealed to us. It's the way we're just slightly one step behind everything that happens and have to get caught up to everything. Like it's a perfect sequence. And the fact that we've seen it fail time in, time out shows you kind of how masterfully constructed and filmed and edited that it is.
I think that's something I want to speak to is so much about revisiting this film. And I've seen it, I don't know, 100 times throughout my lifetime, whatever. I still get worked up by this movie. Like this sequence still is like, I mean, you feel you're clenching everywhere. It's like, oh my God. I mean, you know what's going to happen. You don't even know the exact moment it's going to happen because you've seen it enough times. But the fact that it still is so intense, and it just, I think you can't say that for all movies. It's like, oh, okay, I know this is cool, but it's like, no, you're still 100% ready to just shut it off and run away. Yeah.
Riveting.
So basically the face hugger gets him and havoc ensues.
Well, it's the thing jumps out at our face into the screen and then we're cut to black.
And
there's a really great story about David Giler telling Walter Hill to read this script that we should produce this. And he's like, are you reading it? He's calling him up on the phone at home. He's like,
he's waiting.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah. The guy goes into the thing and the thing jumps out of his face, right? He's like, no, yeah, but no, keep reading. Keep reading.
That's it. Nothing happens after that.
The thing that really makes this script worth buying and worth producing is coming up, man. And I just find the reaction of that phone call kind of funny. Keep reading.
And so
wait until you find out what happens here.
We get this great cut where they're, from the burst at the face. I guess I could do it for the viewer.
Outside.
They cut to the let us in. Something is on Kane. We got to let him in.
Something's attached to his face. Let it open the door.
And Ripley's like, no, can't do it. And this is, this is protocol. This is everything.
Protocol states we can't let an organism.
And they're like, no, you got to let us in. They're like, come on, man.
Or something.
Yeah, it's a 48-hour decontamination. Yeah.
And science officer Ash.
Oh my God.
Goes ahead.
You see it from both sides, you as audience members we're like, that chick who's not letting him in, she's right. But if we were Lambert, I mean, she's bouncing off the walls.
No,
open
that's
the doors. It's like, what are you doing?
Well, it's
I want out of here.
We've seen that. We've seen moments like this played for the tragedy of, it's like, well, let us in. I can't let you in. And then therefore, then you see the moment of the other person, either perishing or something.
Right.
And that person, that hero has to, or whoever has to live with that decision they made.
Instead, Ash just lets them in.
Ash is like, nope, bring it on in. Come on, let's bring him over. Hey, let's let's open him up. Let's get this this helmet thingy off of him. And they cut him open and blah blah blah. So the thing is getting, it's got a tail that comes around the neck.
Improv combat, right, Joel? Improv combat. We're not a fan of that. This is not quite that, what we have. This is only in the director's cut. So if you didn't watch that, you didn't see this. But this is one of the scenes in the director's cut that's great. I wish it was in there. When we joined them in the lab, they're in there. Kane has been undressed. He's got this thing, his helmet's still on, but he's been undressed. And the engineers and the two ladies are out in the hall watching this. The scene begins actually with Lambert appearing, like coming into this room where they're watching, and she hauls off and smacks Sigourney Weaver in the face.
Oh yeah.
And the two blue collar guys have to literally pull them apart. They shot it a bunch of times and it wasn't really working, especially because as a young actor and as a stage actor, Sigourney was recoiling and moving away from it, anticipating that it was coming. So it not only was it not working, the hit had no impact, but it looked wrong. It looked like, it wasn't even a surprise at all. So Ridley basically told her, you're going to have to just hit her. So do it. And that's the take that's in the director's cut.
Wow.
I don't advocate for that. I know I see Joel rolling his eyes like we shouldn't, but
it just is what it is.
Well,
it's a different time.
It was a different time. This would never happen today. Even Ridley sort of admits that. But those two, the whole thing, the movie was built on this sort of improv, sort of, I don't know what the word is, but spontaneous feel to it. And this moment in the film, Ridley cut it, to his credit, Joel, he cut it because it built over the idea that.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. There has nothing to do with what you're saying. I'm just looking at my notes.
I know I just know how you feel about these things, and I know that you're right to feel that way. So I'm edging a little bit. I don't mean to, because I love it. I love that she actually hits her. I don't know that I need that, but I don't need that. It needs somebody to be hit, but you need that she doesn't see it coming. It happens too fast. Sigourney's reaction to it is guttural and instantaneous. She attacks when she gets hit, and it all just feels so real. And it's hard it's hard to fake that sort of thing without tons and tons of time. I think they're better at it now.
Right. And again, a moment like that probably does. Well,
it wasn't like she didn't know she was being hit. That's in the scene.
I just mean fifth time. I mean, from a character and a story standpoint, you as an educated audience member is going to go, it's you sympathize with Ripley because but from a like if you were like, no, you got to get them, from a standpoint of if you're a big fan of Kane. You're like, yeah, no, and it show, having I keep wanting to say Cartwright, but Lambert, having Lambert come in and it's that how dare you essentially from her perspective, from her character's perspective, how dare you play with my life like that?
Right.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that they didn't keep it in, because it would have taken 2 seconds. It would have firmly established.
No, he took it out because he achieved it by nefarious means.
I get that, but I'm saying as far as character-wise, it further
like
establishes Lambert and Ripley, and it also establishes this is the beginning of the decline. And now everyone is.
And it's not just Ripley getting smacked in the face; it's her reaction. She immediately, without hesitation, if Yaphet Kotto's not standing there, she would have kicked Veronica Cartwright's ass.
I love that.
And
I love that.
It's just this cacophony of stuff that happens until the harsh reality of their crew member in this weird state sobers them.
Right, but
up.
I mean, just the fact that there's so much angst and anger. I mean, it's just a perfect setup that things are not going to they're going to go downhill from here. This is
I much prefer the theatrical cut, and Ridley does too, but this moment I do miss because it's it's powerful. It's really is
Interesting.
powerful and interpersonal.
So they can't remove the thing from, they scan Kane, they see that it's got, a tube going down, and they're like, well, it's feeding him oxygen. So
They try cutting it, and the
they
thing
can
that
try
comes
cutting.
out,
Yeah, can't remove it because it has a tail around the throat that tightens, and also
take his
Dallas,
face
though,
off
to his
with-
credit, says, do it. Remove it
Do it.
anyway. Cut it out.
can't remove it
I don't
anyway.
care.
I'll
But
take the responsibility.
we have a little thing called
Yeah.
corrosive acid for blood, which is like
another thing that Ron Cobb came up with to solve a narrative problem that they hadn't
Yeah.
really solved. Why don't they just? It's a much stronger thing to have the captain say, "Do it, kill him. I don't care. I want this thing gone,"
Yeah.
and then not
Mhm.
be able to do it, as opposed to them just not knowing what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's much stronger. And the acid for blood, is this a good time to talk about Jerry Goldsmith? Because It Bleeds Acid music cue is magical. It's an incredible music cue. When they're
Why am I
running through
not-
the ship, tracing the
Yeah.
acid down through the levels as it's
Oh, yeah,
eating
yeah,
through
yeah,
the
yeah,
ship.
yeah, yeah.
yeah, because in my head, that to me you would be playing yakety sax, but Goldsmith I think does.
It is sort of Jerry's version of that, though. It's this
It is
magical music.
Yeah,
cue.
it is
It's
this
weird.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like in the moment in Jaws when they're chasing after the shark
Yeah.
with the barrels,
Very much
and
like that.
Williams's music is da-da-da, and it's just really
Yeah.
sort of, and you're like, yeah, this is wow, and it's sort of that feel. It's this moment of discovery that is just wild, and in that moment, sure, Kane's got a
Well,
thing on his face.
A quick tangent on Goldsmith, though. My favorite cue is, I think they use it a couple of times, but the one I always think of is when they jettison Kane's body. That
Solid
music, it was just it like gets inside me every time I hear it. It's so powerful to me. Anyway, Goldsmith, yay.
Goldsmith's
We'll
music
remember that
was-
for at your
Goldsmith's
memorial
music
service.
is really
Thank you.
operatic and beautiful, and Ridley Scott loves it, but they replaced it in a couple of places.
Yeah, they use some
replaced
classical cues.
They
right? Some
replaced
classical music.
the end credits theme with a classical piece of music, and they stole Jerry's music from a 1972 movie for the air duct sequence. That cue is not what he wrote for that sequence.
Interesting.
So let's get.
They had the music while they were still editing the film, so that his music's chopped up in ways that he didn't really approve of either. And I think you really do feel that when you're watching it. Like it feels like that music just quickly fades out. Where
there's some moments
in a
like
more
that.
refined score, it would carry into the next thing or something. But
or at least end with a wah 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 wah.
they ended all pals and they had gotten over it. But it's funny how, because it's so well utilized and it's such a great score, that it's funny how these little things turned into these fights of indignation between them, but it did.
Oh, so let's get to what happens to Kane.
Jerry forgave Ridley Scott, but he did not forgive Terry Rawlings and would not talk with him when they were working on Legend together, the three of them.
Well, there you go.
So
we
he
get,
forgave the boss man, but the little minion that did the deed, he was never forgiven. Terry goes,
he was just following orders.
Terry's this polite little English guy, and he's like, well, I feel really bad about it, but I think it works really good in the film.
And
it does. It does work good.
So they're faced with the question of how are we going to get this thing off of his face? How are we going to do this? What is going to happen? And then a thing, Ash is like, I think you should come.
It's better if you
Kane.
just see it for yourself.
You see, and you know what? The alien got the alien got bored and just was like, Audi 5000, and it released itself. They find it. It has died.
But real quick.
Kane,
does it not drive you guys bonkers that they go in to search the damn med lab, but they leave the door open for like 5 minutes before Ash finally goes and I'm like, close the door.
Ash finally closes the door, and you're just like,
yeah.
I'm gonna kind of eat my words a little bit, because I talked about how competent the crew is, and I meant that in terms of their mining ability.
Yep.
Once this stuff starts happening, it is like
Look,
it's just like,
nobody
oh my
is
God.
prepared to
Yeah,
deal
nobody
with
is
this.
prepared. Yeah,
And they most certainly are not prepared to deal with
Yeah.
it. And as we find out, every time they do the right thing, they're being undermined.
Yeah, so we do find that. Let's get to that. So Kane is like,
Yeah, we got a half an hour to
I
wrap
don't
this
remember
puppy
what
up.
happened, but hey, you know,
Smothering.
I'm feeling pretty darn good. So
Had a
can I
dream
just
of
get something to
smothering,
eat?
Something.
Yeah.
John
A
Hurt.
little peckish. So they
And
go, they're at the mess, and you know, and
they're eating. It's the only
chowing
good
down
thing on the
food.
ship is the coffee.
Oh, first
It's
first
just
thing
great
I'll do
improv.
when I get home.
You know, we're all
Yeah.
relieved. This is over. Let's get out of here. The ship is fixed. We're off the planet. Happiness, happiness everywhere.
And all of a sudden, Kane starts choking and convulsing, and I believe we even get food ain't that bad.
Just before that, watch the scene. Watch Ian Holm during the dinner scene.
Oh yeah.
Ian Holm
He
is just sitting there.
knows.
He's just sitting there waiting.
Ridley Scott says he didn't see that on the day. He didn't know he'd captured it on the day.
Because he does this little, it's profiling, he does this little.
He does Evan Kim. He does the.
No, he doesn't. He just does it. It's like profile, but he kind of bites on whatever he's eating. He kind of chews it like really fast. He's like this little rat chew.
Just watch him through the whole scene. It's a joy. If you've seen it many times before, if you're watching it for the first time, just watch it. But if you've seen it many times before, just track Ian Holm throughout the lunch scene. It's a very rewarding experience.
Well, the thing
So we
about
get an
this,
alien. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just going to say that knowing what's going to happen, the anticipation, seeing this even after this many times is painful. It is so, because you know, and it's just, every time I watch this, it just blows my mind.
They don't call it a chest buster for nothing.
Yeah, we get this alien creature that does not look like a corgi. Bursts out through Kane's chest. It's a long, you know, we're saying it bursts through, but it's a long sequence of gruesome noises and anguish.
We're privy to a really, again, it's a happenstance. The alien didn't come out. It came out through the prosthesis, but it didn't break the t-shirt on its first try. So what you have here is two sequences edited together into one long, enormously torturous and bloody thing.
That first pop of blood, that's the grossest part of the whole thing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And Ridley knew that, and that's why he kept it. That's why you get the benefit of the
so you get
going right. Both you get them both.
Yeah, so that, you know, and then you get this. So you get this creature that is like sitting in Kane's chest cavity, looking around, going, "Hey, what's going on?" And of course, a couple of the people's instincts are to gotta kill it. It's like you gotta kill it. Where's Jonesy? Where's Jonesy? Where Jonesy is there to be a mouser. Where's Jonesy? But we get this, but of course there's Ash
playing that thing coming out of his chest, or just the convulsions, him spinning around. As Michael said, the sounds he's making. That
would scare Jonesy off.
Yeah, but I mean, because of course we famously know that the cast knew something was coming out, but not how, when, or what it would look like. Is that the understanding?
Well, they absolutely knew what was going to happen in the scene.
And
as
they didn't know the details.
They didn't shoot it in one take, but they shot it in 2 takes. They really didn't have the money to reset all this, so they had to do all that right the first time.
But the reactions on the people on the rest of the cast face are like you talking about the fight between Lambert and Weaver.
Yeah.
And these reactions.
They were profoundly affected. Veronica Cartwright was angry about it. Yaphet Kotto was completely freaked out about it and needed a break.
Well, yeah.
Well, but I'm just saying, that's, of all people, he was just freaked out and couldn't sort of gather himself. He needed time away to do the next thing. And to me, that just really tells you that even their experience on set, on the day, you know, of course, that's what Ridley wanted. In this case, he was playing fair with them, but he basically said, you know, we're not going to show you too much of this. John was walked through it several times.
Sure.
But the rest of them they didn't really know what he was going to do in the scene. So all they're grasping at him and trying to hold him down and help him, like it's
the
all
spoon.
it just feels chaotic. Yeah, the spoon, that's all they came up with that at the time.
Yeah.
That wasn't planned. So, and it feels crazy. And
Well, what's the old actor saying? Your body doesn't know that it's not real.
Right.
You know, so they're all just reacting, and that is a powerful scene, not just because of what happens, but the reactions. But I mean, isn't that also the saying? Acting is reacting. It's like, you know, that's what's going to sell it.
The old saying that I have is my body doesn't know that it's supposed to be thin. So it
mine neither.
So
man.
So they want to kill it. Ash says no. For some reason, Ash is like no. Let's just look at it.
Okay, but I'm sorry. Real quick before we go on, it says something.
Yeah.
Has it ever been discussed or determined what it said?
No.
I think it's asking if you want to extend your car's warranty. And
I don't like it out here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so it runs off. Ash for
and
saying,
rightfully
like,
so. You wouldn't want to know what it's thinking or saying. That would totally ruin it.
Where's my mom?
It's not just alien as a proper noun. It's alien as an adjective as well.
Yeah.
And it's maybe even more the latter. And that's what
I think it looks at Ellen. It's looking at Ripley and goes, I like you. I kill like you last.
I'm going to hang around with you for a while. But have you guys seen any discussions by cast and crew or Scott or anybody that has ever discussed that?
No.
So we don't have a clue what was intended.
Well, wow. I don't think anything. I think you're thinking too much.
But it says it's not a growl. It says something.
Yeah. It's an extremely intelligent thing. But you're not. They don't know, and you're not supposed to know, and there is no answer. And if there was, I promise you, Ridley Scott would ruin it. He's notorious for doing that. He's not David Lynch, where he goes, "I don't know. What do you think it says?"
Right,
he goes, yeah. He said this, blah blah blah. blah. He just tells you. He has an idea for it.
He said, "Hey,
he said Tom Hanks is an American treasure." He said,
The alien said, "Whatever Ridley says, Deckard isn't a replicant."
They have it's a satellite phone inside of that FedEx package. So he
that dumbass should have opened it the whole time. What's he thinking?
So the alien now has run off, and they're like, WTF, everybody, what is that? And then they, and they're like, what is going on? But we gotta let's bag it. We gotta bag it. But first we have to say goodbye to Kane. Launch him out the airlock.
No one says anything. Does anyone want to say anything?
Dallas says.
Yeah, and the note click.
Well, because I mean, it's sad, but he is a coworker. It's like,
I think that
it's not that they're stunned and speechless. I mean,
I know, but it's also such a telling moment of their mindset, and that.
Right.
I've always found that moment a little
micro.
I would have thought it would have been badass. It would have been badass if Ripley would have, like, anyone want to say anything, and she just goes, "He should have left you on the surface."
Maybe he shouldn't open the egg.
Maybe Maybe when you see an egg open,
they're all very task oriented now. Before
they are. So
start doing our own movie here on the podcast.
They're studying the face hugger, seeing what the heck is up with this thing, and then meanwhile they got to try to find this thing now, and they're split off into groups. They're going around trying to find this alien.
Brett
and
wires up some cattle prod like shocker things
and a motion detector.
And Ash has a little movement detector, which
micro densities and air my ass. Yeah,
I'm with her. I'm like, how does this thing work? I don't like this at all.
Yep. And
the one later in the air shaft sequence is just impossible. That couldn't work, but it's still.
No comment. Yeah.
Whatever.
And we also skipped over. You talked about extra study, but we get a little bit of a headbutt between Ash and Ripley
and Ash confront each other
in the med lab
over him letting the people in the ship.
Yeah. Right. That's important.
Well, and then Ripley brings it to Dallas. What, do you even know him? Blah blah blah.
No.
So
I mean,
the company tells me.
Yeah, but we gotta get to the end.
Right.
End is coming, whether we want it to or not.
Got it.
Yeah. They're looking for it. Jonesy surprises Brett.
That's great. As far as fake scare by cat, best in all the movies.
That's
It's a quality fake scare again because Jonesy is evil, and
the great reaction where they all freak out and then they laugh and why didn't you catch it? It's just the cat, man.
Just the cat, man.
And they all start laughing out of relief, like that.
Yeah, but now we're gonna catch him on the motion detector again.
We have to bag it, man. Otherwise, we pick it up on the thing again.
Yeah,
go get him.
Go get him. And so, Brett has a refreshing condensation shower. And he's looking around for Jonesy. He spots Jonesy a few times, and then Jonesy's like, come on. And Jonesy looks like he's gonna come, and then all of a sudden, Jonesy's like,
oh man,
I get it.
Well, in that whole sequence with the creepy meows, the echoey meows, and the little
dripping water and chains and
Jonesy.
And
that is a crafty sequence. That's so.
And then we get
again. The movie's not playing a trick on us. We all know where this sequence is leading. As soon as he gets sent off on his own, but the film invites us to experience it in the kind of most tense way, and so we're willing to go along for the ride in the way.
No, I had this realization on this most recent viewing that they had already passed that section, which we saw. But in my mind, I never made that connection. So they're like, okay, we're clear on that. You can go back and get the cat because we've already cleared this section.
The thing was
so in my mind, I'm like, okay, all right,
that makes sense. The thing was hanging up there by itself the whole time and waited until the people with the weapon-looking things moved on.
Yep,
it's terrifying. There's actually a shot of it in the director's cut where I think watching it for the first time, you wouldn't know what you were looking at, but watching it the second time, you would. Yeah. It was cut anyway, just to be safe, but it's an incredible shot of it coiled up in a ball, swinging up in those chains up above their head. I think I've seen that. Yeah, it's stunning.
Because it's
a really neat story on the
alien is a child at this point, so it's just stuff they're having a little
teenager.
Fun.
It's true.
It's just like, look at me.
So, Ridley Scott he does a commentary along with Sigourney Weaver. They're in the room together talking about the film, and Veronica Cartwright, Tom Skerritt, and Harry Dean Stanton all watched it together on a different commentary too. So that's worth your time as well. Stanton hardly says anything in that commentary. He's just
right.
Yeah, I remember that. Like he just doesn't. He's just not a guy talking about his work. But he was happy to show up and hang out with his friends.
Yeah.
But Ridley says the story goes. At the Prudier, Harry came up to me, and he said something to me, and she's like, "Oh yeah, what did he say?" And she goes. He said, "Thanks for the close-up, man." and Sigourney's reaction to that is, but there's this. I bring up this moment because this is the scene, obviously, that he's talking about. And of course, Harry's a clever guy, and he means that in a jokey sort of way, but he also means it in a sincere way. And you can hear Sigourney's reaction is, "Oh, that's so sweet that he said that to you," because Ridley is sitting there beaming, like you can feel it, even though you can't see it. This guy that they all, for whatever reason, some people are just like this in our lives. They all wanted to impress him and gain his approval somehow.
Yeah.
And none of them ever knew whether they had it or not, because he's just this closed off sort of weird dude. And for him to come say that was everything that he said to him. He said,
I love that.
He said, the movie's good, man. You did good. It's all, you know what I mean? He chose this sort of weird
way to do it,
abstract way to say it.
Yeah.
But they knew him enough at that point to know he wouldn't say anything like that if he wasn't grateful for the experience. It's just,
I love it.
I'm reading a lot into it that is not there factually, but I really believe that's what's happening as Ridley's telling this story. He stops her kind of mid-sentence to tell her this because he's proud that this happened to him.
I love it.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And she knows him well enough. She's the only one who went on to do a couple more movies with him. She knows him well enough to know what, that meant something to you.
Meant something to you. Yeah.
And Harry said that to you. He doesn't say anything to anybody. It's just kind
of
funny.
So we get, that's when we get our first look, and it is a great reveal. Where not only do we get a chance, I can only imagine seeing this in a theater full of people when the alien's mouth opens,
Oh man!
and then
alive.
another mouth opens. It is a brilliant reveal of Giger's alien design. So that takes care of Brett. And they're like, okay, we gotta kill this thing.
And Ripley actually come into the scene. You don't see it, but they come into the scene in time to sort of see this thing happen, and they relay what they saw. It's big.
Yeah.
It's like a person. It's
a person.
It's really,
it's
really
huge.
large now.
This is really quick. This is the moment that this most recent viewing that I caught, which I have never caught before. Because in alien lore, we know that it takes the shape semi-design of its host, right?
Correct.
So when Ash says this line that I had never caught before, when he's like, so it was like Kane's size?
Kane's son.
He says Kane's size, right?
Kane's son is what he says.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay, that's extra.
Even worse.
Extra creepy.
Correct.
But
he says Kane in a very ponderous way, Kane's son. And they all look at him like, F you, and go back to business. But he says Kane's son. That is what he says.
Oh my God, that's even more upsetting. Gross. Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, they know that that the alien is in the ducts, in the air ducts.
And now you know. If you didn't know, Ash is he's gone. He's operating in some other way than the rest of us.
Dallas, they're like, we gotta ambush and we gotta kill this thing.
We gotta skip this sequence. This is the get it into the airlock and flush it. I got a flamethrower. I go into the air ducts. I crawl around. It's very tense and sweaty. And I walk right into the alien. And now nobody can find Dallas. All they find is his incinerator unit. Lambert is off her rocker and like having a complete nervous breakdown now that Dallas is gone. All of them really, but she's lost to us. She's just a big ball of nerves and panic. Ripley's has to take charge. All the other two people in obviously the hierarchy are gone. She says, well, unless anyone has any objections, we continue with Dallas's plan. Parker's like, what are you talking about? It's killing all of us. You're crazy. I mean, he wants to kill it, but he wants revenge, basically. He's having a very alpha male reaction to it. But there's no longer a belief that any of this is going to work out. The loss of Dallas is the moment where you just
it's hopeless at this point.
It is hopeless.
I mean, the infighting is big
and
time.
She's Ash, is there anything you or Mother can tell us about
We're
this
still
thing?
collating.
And so she goes in.
She has access to Mother now.
She has access. She's a senior officer.
My own answers, thank you.
Yep. So she goes into Mother, and it's a great sequence where she's typing in these questions to Mother, and she sees the directive that states it says get the alien. All other protocols are secondary. Crew is expendable. And then you get
Ash appears behind her.
The camera comes over profile, and there's Ash's face.
No, she sits back.
That's what it is. She sits back, and there's that.
It's a perfectly logical explanation for this.
Oh man, alive!
And Ash
and they go at it.
And they go at it, and they fight, and Ash is kicking her ass.
Well, he starts to smother her.
Yeah,
and then Parker
and very, very psycho.
Porn magazine,
and they there's commentary there, but there's also they come in and they get it and they hit him in the head with what is it, a fire
it's a fire extinguisher. Parker hits him in the head with a fire extinguisher, not once, not twice, but 3 times. On the 3rd time, he decapitates him.
Yep.
And hanging
but
off
before
over
he
here.
Decapitates, white fluid starts coming out his mouth.
Yep.
He bleeds milk.
He bleeds
full of marbles and wires.
Yep.
And
Ash is a goddamn
Ash is a robot.
Yep, and it's when we get to my favorite scene is where they're going to try to get some information from Ash as to all of it, and they hook him back up, and it's a great thing where the body's back here, but the head's on the table. It's so nice. And they get him hooked up, and it's it's Ash, going, not that it, will change the outcome, but you do have my sympathies.
Oh God.
It's my favorite part.
I can't lie to you about your chances.
Yeah, that's what it is. I
have
can't
my
lie.
You have my
sympathies.
sympathies.
But the fact that it ends in the grin when they switch back to the fake head.
Well,
it's still the grin.
the speech is more than that. It's the perfect
Yeah.
organism.
Yep.
Its
And
structural
you
perfection
admire it.
is matched only by its hostility.
Yeah.
It doesn't have delusions of morality. I mean, this is a robot admiring a killing machine, and it is extremely creepy speech, and really, really well played by Ian. And again, it adds to the hopelessness of the whole thing. He basically says, he comes right out and says,
you're screwed.
You're
So then,
doomed.
all right. So the only way out
So
of here
they
is we gotta
finally
blow this
agree
thing
with
up.
Lambert, the one who's been panicking. They're like, "Yep, let's pack it in on the shuttle. Shuttle can only take 2 people, but there's 3 of us. Whatever, we'll just
We'll
take our
figure it out.
chances.
Let's get some
Go
extra
get
life
as much
support.
oxygen as you can.
Yep.
We're ditching this thing. We're gonna blow it up.
We
and
out,
kill
yep.
the thing.
Yep.
And so Ripley
See
goes
you.
Ripley goes to prepare the shuttle and start the self-destruct sequence. So meanwhile, so Lambert and Parker are gathering up all their stuff. They're getting everything, blah, 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 doing everything, getting everything. The shuttle's all ready. And then over the intercom, we hear the evil meow. And she goes back to get the cat. And
Ridley
so
Scott has a great line about that because he gets criticized. He says it's the most common criticism of the film is why does she go back for the cat? And he always says, I don't know. Would I go back for my dogs? Absolutely.
Yeah. No,
I think
get
anyone who has a pet,
you know what?
gets something of that.
I would also go back for the cat. I would, but it's just like, oh, come on.
Yeah, it's just another thing, right?
Just another.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's just another thing. And
so before we go into the final moments, I have a question because I have thought one thing all of these years, and on this last screening, I caught it. And I'm like, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when she hears Jonesy, she's doing all the and then she goes back into the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a shot, which I've always assumed is of the shuttle from a far distance, and you see movement in there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that what I think it is?
No.
'Cause she's already left. So my assumption is that there's some point in the timeline where after the discovery of the shuttle, after all this goes
I'd
down,
have to look at the sequence of events, but I don't know
there's
that
some
she's
movement in the shuttle.
There
we
is
see that
in the
movement,
shuttle,
and
but
then
I think
but
it's
then
her.
we have to go back, and he has to be in the way. The
Right.
alien is not in
So
the.
he's not in the shuttle, and then back out of the shuttle, and then back in the
I
shuttle.
don't know. Okay, I need to look at it again because that's what I've always assumed it was. Anyway.
So
Good
the
question. I had the same thought, so it's not a crazy thought. But if you think about it logically, even if it is
but it
it's
could have
a
been
stupid place to show
yeah,
that. It's-
I mean, I thought about it a lot, and you're wrong.
Okay.
No. So anyway,
I think that's her in the shuttle, is what I'm saying.
yeah. So
Whether
so
Ridley
as
has messed about with that in an editing way is possible. He does that. He re-sequences things all the time to make them something different than what they were intended to be. He does it as a director in every single one of his films. He does it with Lambert's death here. He creates in editing a completely different sequence out of what they shot. What originally what Parker does his best to fight the thing, but he gets eviscerated. Essentially, we see he gets severed at the torso. He gets basically cut in half by the thing. What happens to Lambert?
We see it's not just a mouth; it also has a tail.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens to Lambert is that she essentially climbs into one of those storage lockers and basically goes into cardiac arrest. And Ripley finds her, and she's got this ghoulish, just terrible, pale, dead Lambert in this locker. They changed that because the slow opening of the locker, this is all stuff we've seen before, and it slowed the movie down a little bit. But changing it so that the alien rapes Lambert, which is what's implied by the movie, although it's not explicitly implied, it is certainly implicitly implied in every way that he could. He didn't have any footage of that happening. He didn't have the actors performing it happening. All he had was these sound effects that he put together in post,
Which are scary as hell.
shots of Harry Dean Stanton's shoes, and just all the stuff that he pulled from other places in the movie to create this idea. The sound effects I agree with Michael. I mean, they're fantastic. And Ripley running through the ship, listening to it is a terrifying idea. The other shots, though, don't add up to make any sense. It really does feel cobbled together, and a film that is about so much implicit sexual violence, making it explicit at this point, it seems really.
I don't find it explicit. I mean, I get the point. You see the tail go up between Lambert's legs, so it's
Joel
implied.
and I always say what happens in the movie. It's not what you show or what you have the good taste not to show. The question is what happens. What does the movie tell you that happens? That's the thing you have to confront directly, even if it's whatever tastefully done or however you want to put it.
No. I mean, the tail we've seen and we will see that it's a weapon. It's not. Yeah. I don't think it's a method of penetration necessarily, unless you're Bishop. But the point is that I never took it as anything other than suggesting something gross. Right. But I think it just, maybe the tail wrapped around, pulled her closer, or wham with the mouse, she's dead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I never took it as anything other than.
Well, that gurgling and garbling that goes on for several seconds is suggests something else is happening there other than just a quick death.
Well, no, it's not a quick death, but I don't take it as sexual.
Yeah.
Well, you're
just grotesque.
You're in the minority there, I suspect.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I've even seen your own horror movie fans. They're super into this rape idea. They're into it. They think they're into it and it's really scary or gross, but they're still into it and defend it as a great idea and as a thing that was planned from the start, even though it isn't. That irritates me, and that's certainly out there in the lore. And that's what Ridley created.
That's not I've never interpreted it that way.
Well, I'm with you. I think it's something like
the fact that you're hearing
something
gurgling,
alien that's not
gurgling and breathing. I don't take it as a sexual thing. I take it as she's being eviscerated.
Yeah, because we could. There's no answer. There's no definitive answer. It's just whatever you want to interpret it. So Ripley now has to, she comes in, she discovers them there.
She's got to agree with you, Michael. It's alien and it's not this direct thing. I'm just saying that the way Ridley's left it open, it's allowed people to believe that it is a vast majority of people that I've interacted with.
Okay.
So Ripley needs to get back to the shuttle because she can't.
Veronica Cartwright discovered that, and she thinks that's what happened. She thinks that's what he's suggesting happened, the actor, and she discovered that on premiere night. Nobody told her that was in the movie. It's just worth mentioning because the way she tells the story is
she's disgusted by it.
I don't know. Veronica's she's hard to. She's not a wallflower, She's not a weeping violet. She reacted strongly to it. She was pissed that she was left out of any sort of creative decision like that, and annoyed that the thing she spent all this time working on was just suddenly not in the movie. Right. Her character's demise is important to her. So sorry, Joel, you're rolling your eyes at me.
We're just saying the same thing over and over.
I think it's important that the actor's perspective just be added to it. That's why I kept going. I apologize.
So Ripley needs to get back to the shuttle and the alien's in the way. So she's like, I got to stop the self-destruct sequence. And this goes back to what very early on what you were saying about the ship. I love this is that she literally is having to follow the directions.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And I hit this button. Yeah. And I loved that. It's something that I'd kind of forgotten from previous ones. This last time I watched it, and I'm like, oh my God, I love that so much. Because she's fighting the clock and yet she has to watch. And because you also kind of want it to be tedious. If you're talking about blowing everything up.
I was looking at it, Joel, with all the I was watching it and it says, you have 5 minutes. It's like all the tiniest little details. It's so brilliant.
That must have been so much fun from an art director perspective is putting all that stuff in. So she's like, I stopped.
We watched her set it all up, and we've seen how labor intensive it is to get the ship to blow up. And Joel's exactly right.
Final things up, and it's just like
you're blowing up the ship. It should be very.
Turn the cooler
with a lot of
back
redundancy.
On,
it should be a very difficult thing to do, and we know she doesn't have time to reverse all that crap.
Yeah.
And even though she almost does it, she doesn't do it. So Mother's blowing up the ship anyway. The character implies, "Hey, I did it. I made it." But it's like you didn't. You're about 5 or 6 seconds too late.
Yep.
Well, that's when Ripley says, "You bitch." Delivery.
It's so great. So she's like,
that's
okay, I gotta fight my way. I gotta try to fight I got 5 minutes to fight my way back onto the thing. And she gets there, and suddenly it's like, oh, hey, it may okay. Grabs Jonesy and scurries on up and gets on up into the shuttle. And it's this great, it's a sequence, and it's get out of here. And 3, 2, 1, and you see the Nostromo blow up, and she's not far enough away, so she gets the
every
the
time
shockwave
Joel
thing.
and Ryan do a countdown, you can hear Mother counting down, and
That's right. That's
the
right.
That is
destruction of the
indeed.
Nostromo. It's mixed with some other stuff, but the core of it is that
Mother.
mother voice counting down from 10. It's
Mhm.
what's more exciting than a countdown and an
Yep.
explosion? I mean, it's got every element of a big ending you want.
Anytime you watch our show, we're doing a countdown.
And
It's
the
exciting.
Alien has almost nothing to do with the final moment, which is sort of narratively flawed. So
Mm-hmm.
we have what Ridley Scott calls a fourth act at the end of the film, which is in a lot of movies, but wasn't in a ton up to this point. Seems like it's
Right.
in a lot more now.
No, the thing is, if you continue to see after the big moment, we're now programmed as film watchers to know, oh crap. But I think at that time, it's kind of like, what's going on? What's happening? So I love the fact that this was early enough in cinema history to be like, so why are we still here? What's going on? What's happening?
Yeah, well, so we're seeing her getting ready to, okay,
Go into
Whew.
hypersleep, famously
sleep.
disrobing.
me and Jonesy gonna take off. We're gonna take our chances. We're going into sleep.
Yeah, those
And then-
panties, Sigourney Weaver automatic sex symbol right there.
And she's going along, and then all of a sudden she just sort of sees this little bit of movement. And
Well, it's actually
No, the hand reaches out.
oh
at
yeah,
her.
the hand reaches out.
Because he's perfectly blended into
Yep.
the machinery,
He
which
is.
is why the design is so beautiful.
Well, they designed it around the alien and not the other way around, which is a very
Right.
clever way to do it.
And the alien is sort of he's not like bursting forward like, haha, I'm waiting for you. He clearly, I'm wedging myself in here because I got to make an escape too.
But that hand jumping out at her, and even though it's not trying to grab her or anything, it just whack. It just appears like a Chinese fan. It is a jump scare. I mean, it's a quick,
Oh, it's a great
very
jump
thing.
scare. Yeah. And she recoils back. She's trying to hide from it. It's
hiding one
sort
of the
of sitting.
storage bins there.
Yeah,
Happens
and
to have a
it,
space
yeah,
suit
and
in it. What
it's
fortune.
sitting there, and it's like I'm hanging out here. I'm
Little
gonna,
good luck for a change, right, Michael?
Yeah.
yeah. And
I mean,
and
for real.
she
There's a
has
spacesuit in here. Not
Yeah,
only can I
there's a-
put some clothes on while I confront this thing, but
Right.
I can maybe put the spacesuit to work.
Exactly.
and you know what also is there? There's like a little arrow shoot crossbowy thing.
Yeah. Harpoon.
Harpoon.
Yep,
Thank you. That's the word I was looking
right.
for. A little
And
harpoon
harpoon.
thing. Woohoo! Look at this. Everything's coming up Ripley. And so she gets in her suit, and she
Gordon Carroll
sneaks out.
was super mad at Ridley Scott for letting her sing Lucky Star on set
Yeah.
because they hadn't cleared that. And when a song knows you've used it and are asking for forgiveness instead of permission, they hammer you with rights issues.
Yep.
And that's one of the most expensive uses of a song in any movie that
Oh
you can
my
think of.
God.
So she
Just a
buckles
little,
herself.
just a little behind the scenes. Let's get the lawyers involved stuff here at the big climax of the movie. But it's
And
a brilliant actor thing. Look, she's not even really singing it right.
Yeah.
But her just trying to keep her wits about her. She sings "You Are My Lucky Star," which is I love it.
And so she she's able to sort of secure herself in there so that when the
And
alien,
Jones is safely in the hyper chamber, chamber. So
thank God.
it's important.
No, I know.
Poor
But so she, the alien is like, okay, here you come, and you get this great shot, that great shot of Ripley trying to look out the side of her helmet, and there is Linda the alien. I don't know what it, yeah, and and she's able to hit the airlock button, which was that second plan all along. It works out
Right.
luckily, and the alien goes and is holding itself off, and she's able to take the harpoon. And this is also one of the great things is she shoots it with the harpoon, goes out, blah. Oh, and it's like, yeah, she's right. Oh no, that harpoon brings
Has
it
a
right
cable
on
on
back. It has a cable on it, and
And
it
it
brings
gets
it
stuck
back
in the
and it's-
door, so the alien's outside trying to crawl back into the ship.
And this
And
is
then
where
she
you
has
also
to
see
use
like the
ship's
alien.
thrusters to blow it out into space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
she
the
literally
alien-
gets to kill it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Which is very cathartic and
Yeah.
also very exciting.
And so finally it is blown out. It is gone. She and Jonesy have made it, and
A little
and
time
she
has
does.
passed. Her heart rate has come down, and she gets that
Yep.
famous sign off.
Less survivor than Nostromo signing off. So I've always had the question. So she shoots the alien with the harpoon. Chances are some blood might have splattered. Did that not affect the whole of the ship, maybe?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question, but you're not supposed to care at that point.
Well,
But it's a fair
yeah.
question. The thing bleeds
Mhm.
blood. And in other movies going forward here, to take even less heat of this. Certainly, they all bleed acid, and that's an issue in each film in one way or another. But the amount of aliens they go through in these future things, and the way they kill them, and the amount of acid you'd be talking about.
Yeah.
I've always believed that the bigger they get, the less concentrated the acid gets. Sort of the only way to rectify certain things that you see in the other films.
Right.
Like it's
Mhm.
still acid, but it's not that same concentrated stuff where a drop just goes.
As they get
through.
older, maybe they it becomes less.
Yeah. Here's also the thing. At this point, we
No
don't
one's ever
know
said
that
That's
the.
not canon, but in my brain, I'm like.
We
maybe
also
that
don't
explains
know.
why.
We've never seen the big alien bleed. We know that the face hugger has acid for blood.
That's true.
We don't know, and if this is
in
something
film,
that is
we don't know, but we do know.
in
it's
yeah
a
in
bleed.
Ridley's film, we don't know. Obviously, we discover, as we'll talk about next week,
But it's
which is a perfect.
as you say, and a closed capsule. It's perfectly logical that it doesn't. It's a whole different creature. It doesn't have acid for blood. Maybe
So
hard to say.
yeah, so we'll discuss that next week when we talk about James Cameron's Aliens,
Yay.
and Michael is going to join us for that too. Woohoo!
Next week
And,
it's war, everybody.
yeah, next week we jack this thing on up to 11, and we're gonna have some fun talking about aliens. All right, so let us know your thoughts about Ridley Scott's Alien and anything you want to make sure that we talk about next week for James Cameron's Aliens. That of
This
course
your
is at
chance.
Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yay.
And on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook. And if you are watching us on YouTube, click like and subscribe, and you can leave us a comment below, and we'll get back to you. All right. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us for week 1 of the Aliens franchise. And I think that is going to do it for us. Any last words, Ryan?
So many, but you've so wisely stampeded us to the end of the show. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, we got to
We
get
ran out of
going.
time, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next week on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.